So my name's Keith McReynolds, Fire Chief of the North County Fire Protection District. This has been something that we've been wanting to do for many years. How many of you are new to Fallbrook? Raise your hand within 5 years, residents, okay? Wow, about 20, 25% or so. How many of you have been here 20 years or longer? All right, many of you. So my guess is that you've probably lived through the Gavilan fire back in 2001 and the Rice fire in 2007, and then of course most recently the Lilac fire back in 2017. We live in a high fire severity zone. We do. The Fallbrook area, what we love about Fallbrook, our oak trees, our northern San Diego County valleys, although everything is beautiful and green right now because of all the rain that we've had, which is awesome, the hot weather will return, and it'll probably be back in the next couple of weeks. And so along with that will be, of course, a renewed threat of wildfire. So today what we've done is we have invited most of our community partners to come down and share with you a little bit about what they do, what their role is in wildfire response. There's kind of 4 things I want to focus on today: preparedness and the importance of the community preparing themselves for a fire, prevention, our response, and ultimately the recovery that we would go through when, and I won't say if, but when the next wildfire hits.
Talk about is PSPS, which is Public Safety Power Shutoff. I'm sure all of you or most of you know what that is. And community resource centers when we stand them up during a PSPS, and then again the notification process. First, why do we do a public safety power shutoff? And a lot of it is fire weather conditions: extreme high winds, red flag warnings, low humidity, dry vegetation, flying debris, and more for safety is why we shut the power off. You should, if you have not set up for alerts, the process that we have is 7 to 10 days before we know our weather conditions and what initially could be obviously our fire season, which we don't really like using anymore, but 7 to 10 days ahead, we start monitoring. We have our meteorologists, weather stations. We work with the National Weather Service. All of our data that we've received on vegetation, the dryness, everything that's going on out there. So we start monitoring 7 to 10 days ahead. 3 to 6 days ahead, we start really refining the weather forecast and the wildfire potential accordingly, and then 2 days ahead we'll start notifying our customers, and again we'll talk about notifications for our customers and how you can get set up if you're not, who could be affected by the public safety power shutoffs, as well as our critical facilities, medical baseline customers, as well as state, county, and city government agencies. And then a day ahead we'll continue to monitor. We'll communicate with the affected communities and coordinate with our first responders and public safety agencies. And then once we shut power off, we will notify all the affected communities, government, public safety agencies, that everything's been shut off, and then what community resource centers are open. So for Fallbrook, your community resource center is the library. So once the weather conditions are safe, we're starting to talk about the restoration time, we'll start restoring the power, but in order to do so, we have to inspect. So if we shut a branch line off within Fallbrook, we have to inspect that before we switch it back on, whether it's remotely or our crews are out there for fusing or any kind of protective devices. But with that, we also do aerial. So we'll have our aerial, we'll have our ground, we'll have our drones, depending on the location of where we shut power down. And then for re-energizing and patrolling, a lot of the questions that we get if we are activated with a community resource center is, well, it's not windy anymore, right? We get that a lot. And so it could be sectionalizing in different locations and areas. And again, if the helicopters can't get up, and I believe it might have changed, but it used to be 35 mile per hour. If it's more than that, we can't fly. So there's no patrolling that can go on. And then the biggest thing, of course, is patrolling is, was there damage on the line? So those are all the factors that come into the re-energizing process. You know, are we able to get up? Are we able to inspect? If there's trouble, we have to fix those and make those repairs to make it safe. And so those are some of the big holdings of why we're not re-energizing. In order to do that too with the notification process, you will be notified that patrolling is going on in your neighborhood. So the good thing about our notifications are, you will, if you are set up for notifications, like I said, 48 hours in advance, you'll either get a text, a phone call, an email, depending on what you've set up, or all three. I live in the backcountry, so I have all three of them, and my phone will ring off the hook, my text will go off, but knowing that 48 hours before, 24 hours before, 12 hours before, and then 1 to 4 hours, you will be notified. And we notify that much is so that you get prepared, right? When we're shutting off power, some people are on wells. You have your large animals. There are a lot of different things that could help, you know, fuel if you have your generator. You want to make sure you have all of that so that if it is a widespread PSPS, you do have, if the gas stations are down or whatever it might be, you're prepared. Water for your large animals. You know, I always like to say when we're outreaching is fill your bathtub up. You know, when you fill your bathtub up, you can maintain to flush your toilet and be able to get that water if you are on a well. So it's little ideas like that that's really, really helpful. When Infect Your Power is out, and we are in a public safety power shutoff, and I want to stress that because we have public safety power shutoff, we have unplanned outages, and we have planned outages. So all of that kind of comes into play. But during a public safety power shutoff, where we shut the power off in your community, we stand up what we call community resource centers. Those centers for Fallbrook, like I said, is the library. And these are some of the things that we have there are water, ice, blocked ice, so that you could take for your large animals. If you need, you know, to make sure that they're getting their water, you can take either regular ice, blocked ice. We have charging facilities, medical baseline. We have areas where if you have your dialysis machine or some forth, we have privacy screens. You can come in, you can charge your cell phones, snacks, water, like I said, and then the most important thing is information. We're either staffed through SDG&E, or now we have a third-party contractor that has been trained that will come out to be able to help and answer your questions the best that they can. And then those hours are from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that could change depending on the scenario, if we get re-energized, if it's a later public safety power shutoff and we have to stand up. It could be at different times throughout the day, but if it goes into the next day, 8 a.m., we are there ready to go. And then lastly, with the notifications, we have an app that's called Alert SDG&E. And the really cool thing about this alert is if you're on a master meter, say you're living in a mobile home park type scenario, or you're in an apartment where it's one master meter, this app will allow you to still get a notification. In the past, it was, you know, if you have an account, then you'll get notified. But this will allow you up to 5 different locations. For me, I live in Descanso, but I also have family that live out in Valley Center. And so they're senior, so I'm able to sign up for them too. So I know if something's happening in their community and I can't get a hold of them. So it's a really good app to have. And then the last thing is wildfire safety fairs. I think some people in this room might have attended them. The closest for you would be Valley Center. We've got over 45 different partners, both internal and our partners, and it's all about preparedness. So there's music and food, and it's a fun day, but it's a fun day filled with a lot of important information. And so they've been doing them. We're 5 years in, and everything seems to be moving forward, and it's a real positive, and there's a lot of good information besides the information as well that you can get here today.
There's a lot of different information that I can cover as far as the Sheriff's Department goes in our response to fires. Obviously, our biggest partner in all of this is the fire department, whether it's North County Fire or Cal Fire. So we usually get the call for an assist, and we get the call usually first because we're smaller and faster and we can get into areas that the rigs can't get into. Upon arrival, we're usually giving an assessment of the fire, wind speed, direction of travel, how big the fire is. Obviously, it's estimated. And then we start going house to house and knocking on doors and getting the word out that the fire's coming in that direction, and we're asking you to leave. Depending on the circumstances of the fire, an incident command post will be set up with the fire department. We'll usually have our sergeant there and then eventually a lieutenant, depending on the size of the fire, where it's going, and the threat of the fire. It could be a lot bigger response. We could initiate our incident command system where we start doing outside agencies, requesting help from them. The air tankers start coming in, more brush rigs from other parts of the state, and even other states will come in and help. So with the assistance of the fire department, we're gridding out the fire, we're looking to see where the fire goes, and we're hitting those grids with deputies and other law enforcement, and sometimes even fire department personnel to do the notifications and asking people to prepare to leave or to leave. You get that order that says, hey, the fire's imminent and you need to leave. That means pack your wallet, your quick stuff, and get out. As many of you know, Fallbrook, there's a lot of places here that are one way in, one way out. Then there needs to be a lot of preparation. So during the notifications, we're really requesting you to get out because it's an imminent threat and the fire moves very quickly. Deputies are usually out in front of the fire, trying to get the people where the path of the fire is going to. And then after the fire starts burning and bigger areas start opening up, our responsibility is still the fire, but we also now have deputies set in place for looters. People coming in, looking to take property from the houses that have burnt, or cars, anything like that. So we kind of have a multitask job. We're trying to stay out in front of the fire, give the notifications, preserve life, help out anybody we can as quickly as we can. As everybody knows, our patrol cars are kind of small, so if we need to, we can only put a certain amount of people or items inside the car. I've done that. Generally, we don't like to take our deputies off that type of task where they're out in front and doing the notifications, but we will if we have to, depending on the circumstances. And that's kind of what we do. It's not rocket science or anything like that. We work very closely with the fire department. They call the grids, we get the notification, we go out to that grid and we start moving people. Another thing that we do is perimeter on the fire. So if deputies have a road closure, keeping people from getting in, that's a big deal. If you're out and the fire's burning and you're trying to get home, more times than not, you're not going to get back to your house. It's not because we're being mean. It's just because we want to keep people out of the danger zone. It's one less responsibility that we have to deal with. Because when we get a bunch of people running around from house to house to house, if we've already gone to that house and knocked on the door and found out that nobody's there, we're not coming back to that house. We're not going to do a double check on that. We're not going back into the fire zone to check that house if it's already been marked empty.
I just briefly want to talk to you about our social media page. So that is going to be where We're going to push all of the information out that you need to know during an evacuation or during a fire. It's SDSO Fallbrook. So that's Sam David, Sam Ocean, Fallbrook. And we do everything on there from events that we're at, events that we're having, to road closures, water leaks, gas leaks. And the reason we put it out on our Twitter page, we only use our Twitter page for the Fallbrook station, is because it alleviates the calls of general questions that come into our communication center. When there's a wildfire, we want to make sure that our dispatchers are tending to life and limb critical incidents, and instead of asking for general information, because you're probably not going to be able to get through. The County of San Diego website has the apps and information that you can sign up for on your cell phone. But as far as a law enforcement perspective, if you want quick information, that's where you're going to get the information from. I know there's a lot of people that I hear oftentimes that say, oh, I don't have Twitter, I don't have a social media page. I would highly recommend, even if you're not a social media person, for example, I set my parents up with an app for Twitter, and it's titled First Responder Page. So they live in another county, and it's all the information that they need where they can pull it on their cell phone, they can click on the app, and it just has those that they want to follow: fire, police, and city government agencies. So that's what we wanted to share from the Sheriff's Department's perspective. If you want quick information as to what's going on during an evacuation, we're going to put it on our main Twitter page. Thank you.
As water agencies, we've developed partnerships here in North County. As everybody's aware, our agencies are all small. And what we found is developing partnerships, whether it be with county roads, CAL FIRE, North County Fire, our neighboring water agencies like FPUD, really helps us get our mission accomplished. This happens in different ways. So a lot of people don't know, but we actually train with the fire department, the water agencies. We do that with trench rescue, confined space training. We also do emergency planning training with the fire agencies. But lately, because of these recent fires, especially the Lilac Fire, we've changed how we respond to fires as water agencies. The fire department can contact the water agency and have a water agency rep come to the incident command post now. And even in some cases, without even being contacted, the water agencies are showing up to the command post to make liaison with the incident commander, to have that conversation and say, what can we offer as a water agency to your incident? Okay? This is true for both FPUD and Rainbow. We also, it allows us to get a better assessment of exactly where the fire is going, what the impact's going to have on our water system. Okay, so this is coupled with what SDG&E is doing. So when they start turning the power off, that could affect our water pump stations, our sewer lift stations. Not every single one of them has a generator backup. So we need to do the liaison with SDG&E, who are also at the command posts. Then we take it a step further and we work with the Sheriff's Department, who's at the command post, and we can figure out what roads are they thinking about closing, where is access limited, and if we need to get to a site, we can let them know so that they can let our staff get in and do what they have to do. So there's a lot of partnerships that happen throughout the year that are automatic when something like this happens. So just wanted to kind of let everybody know about that. Also recently, in the last several years, we've gotten on a radio system called the 800 megahertz radio system. FPUD has some of the radios, so does Rainbow. This allows us to have intercommunications with the fire agencies, okay? So we can actually talk to them on the same channels, which was very unique. I think 2003 is when the system came up countywide. So these are countywide radios, just another means of communication. Water supply. So as a water agency, it's incumbent on us to always maintain water quality and a constant supply of water. We have staff, both FPUD and Rainbow have staff 24/7 that make decisions on how much water is coming into their systems. Every day, 3 times a day, they can make changes. So they decide, depending on the weather, how much water is going to be in every single tank in their system. During the winter time, the water levels are lower in the tanks. The reason being is you want to keep that water as fresh as possible. A lot of people may think that those tanks sit full all the time, But I like to equate that if you take a glass of water out of your faucet, put it on your counter, would you come back and drink that after 5 days? Maybe not. But if you came back an hour, you probably would. So it's the same concept with our water tanks. We're gonna run those tanks up and down to keep that water fresh all the time. What happens during the summertime, when Santa Anas are forecast, red flag events are forecast, those tanks sit higher and we're not allowing them to go as far down as before. So you hold that water at a higher state. The reason being, fire protection. We want the firefighters to have enough water to do what they have to do. We also want to have enough water in case we have a water main break. So we have enough water in storage. If we have to shut down that street, we still have enough water in storage. The operators do this by forecast. They look at the weather just like weather people do. They look at what the trends are for the past week or the past days, and they make these decisions. The water's going to be there. The only thing that's going to prevent it from being there is if we have main breaks and we have to shut down water lines. Okay. Red Mountain Reservoir. Everybody knows that's a giant open. Well, everybody knows that's a giant open top reservoir. That's a site where helicopters can actually dip down and pull water out of there to fight fires. Rainbow Water recently constructed a tank called a helihydrant at our Palamesa Reservoir site, and that is a 5,000-gallon steel tank that a helicopter can hoover over and pull water directly out of that tank. CAL FIRE and both out of Riverside and San Diego County, the pilots have flown it, they've dipped into it, done practice runs, so everything's worked out seamlessly. There's another one being planned in the Gomez Creek area, waiting on some funding on that. And I believe CAL FIRE at the Rainbow Camp has one right now. So just a different, innovative way of giving fire to firefighters. Normally we do it on a fire hydrant. We're doing three-dimensional. We're going to get it to them in a helicopter. The reason being, and this was a great story, last summer, we would say, well, the local ponds they dry up and, you know, the creeks are dry, whatever the normal water sources are dry, but as we all know this year, that's not necessarily the case. So a lot of rain this year. But really good resources for our fire agencies. I'll talk about contact information.
Good morning, everybody. I only want to talk about two things. So two things to keep in mind. Some of the things that our district here, I think both districts here, is when there's a fire, oftentimes people are tempted to leave their water running and leave. We would never tell you not to do that. But the one thing we do want to remind you is firefighters, when you fight a fire, you need two things, right? You need a firefighter and you need water. And we want to make sure that the water supply that the firefighters need when out there fighting fires isn't impacted. So just keep that in mind. If your thought is that you want to go and you want to leave your water running, what impacts that could have, for the firefighters being able to do their jobs. And secondly, want to remind you that it's really important, if you haven't updated your contact information with your prospective with your prospective water district, to please do that. Oftentimes when there is an emergency, the way that we communicate with you is to reverse 911. And if we don't have an updated contact phone number, we can't get a hold of you. So make it a point this week, if you haven't already, contact your water district, the customer service, to make sure that that is updated. It's really important.
And one last thing, just to let everybody know, during events, potential fire events, or even like with the atmospheric rivers we're having, the water agencies all start talking to each other. So at the management level and the supervisor level, we have mutual aid agreements with each other in the water agency. So if FPUD needs help, we can go help them. They'll reimburse us and vice versa. It's the same with Alcides Water, VID. We all have these agreements. But more importantly, we start talking with our partner agencies, especially in red flag conditions. Hey, we're ready. This is what we got. I've got staff available here, and everybody starts talking to each other. So just wanted to put that out there. At the supervisor and management level, all these partner agencies are constantly in communication when it looks like things are about to happen. So it's not this black hole where we're just randomly showing up to these events. We're actually working really well together, and it's unique to this community. And it's something that I'm really proud of being part of this community.
school districts, one of our top priorities is to provide a safe and secure learning environment for students, which includes preparing for a variety of circumstances. In California, high winds and extremely dry conditions can create extreme fire danger. For this reason, we are required to prepare for the varied and complex impact of wildfire, smoke, and poor air quality. In partnership with the San Diego County Office of Education, we have each established a fire protection and evaluation plan and work regularly with the public safety agencies here today to coordinate preparedness efforts and clearly outline procedures and protocols for when evacuation or voluntary dismissal becomes necessary. Our comprehensive school safety plans include an evacuation decision tree, response protocols and procedures, and communication supports. So in the event that we find ourselves in a situation where we must put into motion our fire protection and evacuation plan, we communicate with families through our regular modes of communication, which each family has selected to their preference, and that could be email, text, or a phone call, and in the family's preferred language, which they have also self-selected. We also update our social media channels regularly, and we encourage you to sign up with Alert San Diego, which will provide evacuation orders and warnings. Download the San Diego County Emergency app found at www.sdcountyemergency.com, which is another option for monitoring local conditions during an emergency. So what can you do now to assist us? The most important action that you can take, and you've heard it from a couple of the other agencies, is to make sure that your emergency information is updated with the school. Ensure that your email, your phone number, and your emergency contact information is updated in our student information system. And by doing so, we can guarantee that you will receive all the communication and that reunification with your students will be swift and smooth. Your information can be updated electronically without visiting any of the schools or districts. And information on how you can do this can be found on each of the school districts' websites.
Are you guys lucky to live in Fallbrook or what? It's just a magical drive coming in here. So we know that living with some rural areas, lots of animals, challenging geography, we have pretty extreme fire risk in here. We know that, right? And now you know also that we can have power outages. You heard about those from SDG&E. All of those things can make us, pretty compromised in fire season. So we're always going to be really paying attention to those red flag warnings, aren't we? The minute those things start rolling through, if you hear there's possible conditions for PSPS, we're going to be really paying attention and we're going to be extra careful. You'll hear from the fire guys in a bit about a defensible space, how you can prepare your homes and families that way. But I want to really remind you, I'm super passionate about preparedness. So come see me over here. You can't mistake it. I have my dog go kit and my little pop-up shelter. I, like you, who here has been evacuated? Yeah, wow. Yeah, I'm with you. It's stressful, isn't it? So everything that we can do in advance to be ready before that happens. What are the three things we always say? Make a kit, right? Who's got a kit in here? Excellent. You have a kit, a small kit in your car, and maybe a bigger one in your house or your shed, and an easy to get to place. Do you have a go kit for each one of your animals and your animal kids and your animal parents? All those members of your family. And if there's anybody that's a senior or maybe has special needs, you're going to need extra time, aren't you? So the most important thing you can do is not wait. You're going to have a kit. And who here is a camper? Aren't we all campers, or we like to travel? Got a motorhome, a trailer? That's your instant evacuation center, isn't it? So you're going to keep your stuff in there if you have one of those. That's super great. And if you do end up evacuating either to a shelter or to a friend's house, you've kind of got your own little personal space. So even if you're in an emergency shelter, it's really nice to have that RV, that your trailer or your mobile home, and you can set up some kind of temporary dog fencing for your kids, your animal kids, and your kids. What's the second thing we always say? What's the second part? Make a kit, family plan. Everybody thought about that family emergency plan? And that is, you've got the kit, right? And you'll see over here, I have a couple sample kits, just a short list of what are the 5 things, not 10, not lots, what are the 5 things I'm gonna grab before I've got to evacuate. I have 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I'm gonna grab 5 things and we're gonna be ready to go. So one of those things on that list is your go kit, right? With your water and all those supplies that you need. You're also going to probably have, you're going to grab your laptop and you're going to want to have those, maybe those external hard drives that have all the photos and your important documents. Good, heaven forbid if you lose everything. You need documentation before, during, and after. And, you know, pictures of family members, pictures of your animals, all that fun stuff. So you've got that short list of evacuation. I've been evacuated several times from a wildfire, also from a derailment. And the thing I learned is that animals get stressed immediately. They smell it long before we do, and they pick up on the stress that we have. So you're going to want to get your animals into a smaller area really quickly that's easy to evacuate them from. In my case, I have this crazy story about my cat. You know, she just was dematerializing. So you want to grab animals quickly, get them into a smaller area that's easy for you to evacuate them from when the time comes. And we're not going to hesitate, are we? We're not going to hesitate. We're going to evacuate. We're not going to wait for the knock on the door, hopefully, and we'll talk in a minute about that Alert San Diego, so those emergency alerts, right? But don't wait for that if you have concerns. I have a story where middle of the night, I'm only getting up at midnight because I'm going to do this crazy middle of the night race. And I look out the door and I see this raging wildfire burning straight at me. So luckily, we got our 4 neighbors on our little street together, and you know what happened? All 4 of the neighbors had a different impression about what they needed to do. I immediately kicked into gear and started packing my car, and everybody else went back to bed. So please do not hesitate. Don't wait. What's the worst that can happen? You're ready in advance. You know, you go somewhere early, because what happens when these things happen fast? What are the roads like? And are your neighbors going to need help, right? Who needs help? I had to go down, there was a senior facility below me, went down and checked on them, and everybody had evacuated but one. So you might need to help somebody that's your neighbor, and we're going to band together as neighbors in those circumstances. What's the third thing we say? So build a kit, stay informed, or excuse me, oops, I gave it away. Build a kit, family plan, and stay informed, right? So you want that critical information. You heard from fire and sheriffs, you're going to look at their Twitter accounts. That's going to be really good information. So even if you're not on Twitter, you're going to look at Twitter. We also have, I'm going to show you this flyer, and come see me over here. While supplies last, if you sign up today for that Alert San Diego evacuation notification, I will give you a free first aid kit. So 2 things, Alert San Diego that you heard about from everybody. So all the local emergency response agencies use one platform. It's also called SanDiegoEmergency.com, but we thought alertsd.org was easier to remember. Alertsd.org, okay? So you opt in there on your address and you put in your email and your phone. We do have white pages, but who has white pages anymore, right? We do have some information from utilities, but that opt-in is going to be the best. You can put your cell phone number in there and your email. That's something we can't get anywhere else. And you're going to tie that to your address, right? Your home address, as well as maybe your work address, maybe your parents' address, your kids' address. So you can get an alert that way. So that's alertsd.org. Also, we have a free SD emergency app, and you heard about that from other people. So you can, on that website, I've got my laptop over here, you can actually log on and go right and download the app. Highly recommend that. That has that preparedness information. It'll give you emergency alerts. It has Shake Ready on there, so if there's an earthquake, you'll get an alert on that. And if there's recovery information after the fact, you'll get that there. So I think those are my big things. Make a kit, stay informed, do a family emergency plan, be ready at any time. I guess I'm sort of remiss in not saying who OES is. So we work side by side with county fire, county sheriffs, all of these agencies. We're here for you. You are unincorporated area, so you come first. We always are aware of who's in the unincorporated area because you're our people, right? If you live in a city, the city takes care of you too. So we care about everybody in the county, but we really care about you folks in the unincorporated areas like Fallbrook.
Wanted to highlight one of the obvious themes of today's presentation, which is cooperation and teamwork amongst all agencies within the County of San Diego. We have fantastic relationships amongst all fire departments, law enforcement agencies, public services, utilities, and so on that allow us to progressively and effectively mitigate wildfires. But that partnership doesn't stop with just those agencies. It continues with you, the residents, and we can give you those tools for success to allow us all to work together to safely mitigate those incidents and keep you safe, your property safe, and the environment safe as well. So what are those components that we can go through that give you those tools for success that allow you to do your part so that we can effectively mitigate those fires? Number one are the components of ready, set, go. First component of ready, harden your home. And again, we can go over specific details at our booth, but make sure you do your legwork at your house. Prepare your house. Get flammables away from the house. Make sure your registers and events are in good repair. Make sure that you have, again, your decks clear of debris, your lawn furniture is away from, flammable areas next to your house. Make sure your house is ready to have the best chance of survival in the event a fire gets close to it. And again, the big one that you hear day in and day out is create that defensible space. Make sure you have your 0 zone, your 1 zone, and your 2 zone. Make sure your vegetation is properly maintained. Your annual grasses are mowed to that 4-inch level. Your non-fire resistant plants in your zone 2 are limbed up. Your brush is reduced to 50% versus what would be natively seen in the environment. And make sure that you call your local fire department. We'll come check out your property and make sure you're within compliance and give you tips on how to get there and get your property ready to go in the event of wildfire. Because as we know, it's not fire season, it's fire year. It's not when it's going to happen. It's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So again, after the defensible space and the ready component of Ready, Set, Go, we go to Get Set. And as already stated by some of our cooperators, up here, make sure you have your wildfire action plan. Make sure you have your emergency supply kit and your family communication plan. And then again, the last component, which is go. If you have that evacuation order, go. It's not worth the safety of your family or yourself. Make sure you have that plan in place and you can go at a moment's notice if that fire is impinging your neighborhood or your home. So as an agency, and again, representing Cal Fire San Diego and San Diego County Fire Protection District, what do we do to keep our goal, which is keeping 95% of fires at 10 acres or less, It's what do we have at a glance in the county? We have 950 personnel, 42 fire stations, 3 fire centers, 2 fire camps, 50 engine companies at peak with the ability to expand if conditions warrant, bulldozers, hand crews, water tenders, other ancillary equipment that we could stand up at a moment's notice in the event of an emergency as well. And we have all those readily available to help anybody and anywhere in the community of San Diego and the state of California, again, at a moment's notice. And then there's the one additional highlighted asset that most people see and remember most on incidents, and that's our aircraft. And we do have a local air attack base in Ramona where we have our air attack plane and our 2 air tankers. We also have a great cooperative relationship with San Diego Sheriff Department where we staff a few helicopters there where they operate and fly, and we staff with our folks for both medical rescue missions and fire missions as well. Those are readily available for the community in the event of an emergency as well. Not to mention additional aircraft available throughout the county, available through, as stated before, San Diego Gas and Electric, and San Diego City Fire, and as well, if conditions warrant, we have agreements with local Navy and Marine Corps to stand up their aircraft as well, if the need arises.
Fallbrook is a wonderful community, and if there's one thing Fallbrook identifies is being self-reliant and helping each other out. And that's a really, really important aspect of our friendly village. And we want to make sure that we're getting the most out of that in the event of a wildland fire or even any other type of emergency beyond just wildland fire. So FEMA, which is where I learned part of this, they look at emergencies all throughout the nation and really internationally. So what I'm going to be talking about is kind of on a higher level here. And this is really common sense stuff, but it is important, and FEMA has been able to identify that. And it's really about the concept of your social networks. Now, I don't mean social media. I mean you, the citizens that live here, and your connection to everybody else, the connecting tissue that makes up this community and how well you're plugged into that, because that actually is very, very important. The first part of that I'm going to talk about is you and your neighbors and how well you know each other. Because, as we alluded to, when things are getting busy, the wind is up, maybe there's a fire that started somewhere and it's coming this way, we're pretty saturated. And we're going to be relying on a whole lot of help that's coming in from out of town, and it takes them a little while to get here. We want you to understand that if you consider us your first responders, your neighbors, I'm borrowing this term from Rachel over here, your neighbors are really your zero responders. How well you know each other, how well you know their names, how well you know their capabilities, their skill sets, their tools they have, or maybe the help they need. Which one of your neighbors have mobility problems and need to move around in scooters? Which one of your neighbors have an electric gate that we talked about when the power's out? Maybe that gate's not going to be able to open. Which one of your neighbors have a good background in construction or law enforcement? Or if you hit the jackpot, you're living next to a retired firefighter. That wasn't as funny, that one. I thought that would have killed it. Sorry. Get to know your neighbors. Understand that you guys can help each other out even a little bit, which will help make really, really powerful gains, because we are thinking about a large fire or disaster, not just from when it starts to when we're done and the fire trucks go home. We're thinking earlier in preparation, and we're thinking way, way later, 6 months later, as far as recovery. And how well you are able to interact with your neighbors is very, very important. The second aspect of those social networks are how well you know the people where you're going to be able to get the help. And that's what we're going to be starting to do in just a few minutes. How well do you know all the government agencies, the non-government agencies, the nonprofits, the elected officials that are here to help you? So if you look around this room here, we've tried the best we can to include as many resources that we want you to get to know. We want you to start developing relationships with all these other agencies that can help you with your very specific questions and get to know them. Like we said, we've got Corey here from an elected official. We've got people from Large Animal Rescue. Obviously, we have the schools here. We've got representatives that can help maybe if you have elderly patients or something like that. All that is very important. And getting back to the FEMA talk I talked about, they were able to measure success in some of the disasters in Japan, like during the tidal wave, as well as the hurricanes down in the Gulf Coast. And the better the individuals in the communities had access to their government officials before them, the faster the recovery happened, and the faster those towns and villages were able to return to a normal status.